there we go. Andre.
Hi, everyone. The first question is for Rob. Relax. Rob, I know that, well, you are responsible for MV3 in Mozilla. Yeah, I would like just to know how it's going and how far are you from implemented that all, and this includes declarative net request, service worker, and maybe you will make some introduction in your vision of MV3. Thank you so much.
Yes. So MV3 is progressing steadily. We have already released dev preview, and we are intending to release general availability of MV3 in 2 releases or so. On the service worker aspect of it, we decided to prioritize the implementation of event pages, because that is something that developers can already use, and it's more easily for them to convert from existing MV2 extensions to MV3. At a later stage, we will implement service worker support. On declarative net requests, I'm currently implementing that API. The focus of that is primarily compatibility, because the DNR, as currently designed, cannot support the needs of ad blockers at the moment. We will continue to support blocking web requests to allow extensions and ad blockers in particular to build extensions that work best for that particular use case. We do hope that the DNR API will evolve and support more use cases, but we don't see that happening at the moment. So that's why we decide to prioritize blocking web request support for now. Did I answer your questions?
Yeah.
And my name is Rob, by the way, not Robert. The slides said Robert.
All right, I don't see any question on the chat just yet, so here's another appeal to the remote audience. You can now really hit the keys. And for as long as we don't have a remote question, the on-site people are in advantage, and we'll keep on asking.
Hi, it's a question for the Google guys. Why do you hate ad blockers? No, I'm sorry, I have a genuine question. So I'm not really a web extension guy, but I really don't understand the difference between dynamic rules and static rules. So what's the difference and why are the different limits? And I understand that the static rules are compiled as part of the extension, and that's how they're loaded. This might be a question for the other guys who are implementing MV3 as well. But what's the sort of functional differences? Like, do they have different permissions or something? Or can we just have all of them be dynamic rules?
I can go ahead and start with that one. So the biggest thing that we're trying to accomplish with having the static rules is to be able to have an impression of what that extension is doing from the extension package. And in a perfect world, we wouldn't have any need for dynamic rules. We're nowhere near that. We understand that it's unreasonable. And so we know that we need that option of dynamic rules for things like differential updates of the filter lists that are coming down, and then also for customizability with users in order to have those custom rules that they add. But we want still the majority of that functionality to be able to be found in the extension package. So that's one of the main motivations for having those static rules. I think it also gives a lot more transparency into what the extension is doing, both for us but also for users, where you can see then that these are the rules that are being done. This is how this extension is operating.
So is the plan to move to purely static rules at some point in the future?
I don't think that that's realistic at any point in the future.
Okay. So functionally, they're the same?
In terms of the operations that they can do?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thanks. Well, follow-up question then, sorry. So why are there different limits for dynamic and static rules?
The different limits are there for a couple of reasons. One is that by having the majority of rules in static rules, we have that initialization cost once, and we know that it's going to happen on install, and the bulk of those are loaded in that way, versus having the extension very frequently modify the rules, which is a very costly operation, because we need to go through and then recalculate all of the flat buffers. If we have all the rules in dynamic rules that can encourage the kind of anti-pattern from a performance standpoint of tweaking them on the fly all the time. And that's something that we don't want. The other thing is, again, to encourage that practice of having the majority in the package, where if we had the same 30 or 300,000 rules possible to be dynamic, then there's no incentive to do that.
Sorry to hold the microphone here, but is there an option to have like pre-compiled rules where the filter list authors could, I don't know, use a tool to create a binary package that the extension could use natively, so the recompilation wouldn't have to happen?
In order to distribute static or dynamic rules?
Either. Well, dynamic, I suppose.
I think that would be very, very tricky, especially because our format for the flat buffer can change in Chrome. And so if you have an extension that's used across Chrome Canary on 108 versus Chrome Stable on 105, then there's no way of actually shipping that.
Okay, thanks.
And that would also not be cross-browser compatible. So the DNR API is kind of cross-browser now, with Safari supporting it, Chrome supporting it, Firefox will be supporting it. Supporting some kind of dynamic forward would defeat that kind of interoperability.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that sort of sucks. Sorry.
Well, that feels like in implementation detail, like, would it be possible to, at submission time, generate this stuff? Like, when you receive the package from the extension author, could you generate the flat buffers and associate them with the package and then distribute that? I think we have a hesitation on the Chrome side where we don't want to modify the contents of the package, the stuff that the extension author is giving us very much, or little to not at all, right?
Yes, and we would still have the issue of different versions of Chrome.
Right, absolutely. Well, you could have a fallback where if it is incompatible, well, how would you know it's incompatible? Anyway, I'm just thinking out loud.
All right, Peter, you will have to pass the mic
sorry,
on though
sorry.
now. Yeah, and again, remotees, you can use the Slack chat now, and I will be reading out your question to these gentlemen because we don't have a remote question just yet, so we can keep on going.
Well, first to the organizers, you can assume that I have my hand up like all the time, and if you can't find anyone else in the audience, just throw me the thing and we will think something up. And the second question is, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that most of the limits were chosen kind of arbitrarily. What evidence do you need from us to change some of them? So what do you expect to see, to read, so that, well, we could, it was not just an unfounded change, so, well.
Yeah, so when we were coming up with these limits, we wanted to take a fairly conservative approach at first because we know that breaking changes are hard. And I mean, this is obviously a great example of why they're hard. And so we wanted to be able to increase the limit rather than realize, oh, we gave too many rules, now we need to cut them back and we're going to break more extensions. In terms of what we would need in order to change those limits, I think there's two things. One would be evidence of a real need out there. And I think that just gathering data from the different content blockers of this is the number of rules and this is why we need this many is really valuable, as well as some more evidence around some of the things that we've done to clean up some of the filter lists. So I've heard and seen that it's been fantastic to see all those filter lists cleaning up old rules and going down in volume. And if we can continue that, and then there's still this evidence that this limit is not enough, we need more space. That would be one part, is just that evidence of need. The other part is something that we can't really get from you, we need from Chrome users. And that's data around the performance, because that's always our concern with this, is what is the real world performance going to be when we have this number of rules enabled? And right now, because there's still a relatively small number of manifest v3 blockers.
I'm not just talking about the rules. Well, DNR consists of like dozens of different limits, so read any limit. Rule set limit, quotas, all this stuff.
It's pretty much always the same answer of both that combination of proving out the need as well as that we could increase that limit without hindering the user experience. And for that first one, that's where any data from you is fantastic, but that second one is one that we need to gather from users using Chrome with these extensions so we can see what the cost is associated with having, whether that be more rule sets or more rules or more calls to different functions.
I'm sorry.
Well,
I will
I'm
get
going to
it
take a moment to...
just in a moment.
Hold on, one more thing. We also have a wide variety of devices that we have to support. So performance characteristics. Oh, did I just cut out?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm done. I'm going to go walk over there. Oh, I'm back.
Would you like this mic?
Oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to talk from the side real quick. Wide variety of devices that we have to support, which means we have a wide variety of performance characteristics, and developers often don't use the type of devices that end users are using. We necessarily have higher powered machines that are, you know, more reliable, more consistent. It's also kind of a challenge that we've seen in the mobile ecosystem where a lot of developers use the latest iPhones, for example, and that means that the devices that people are using in their hands are significantly worse at running the same apps that developers think that they're doing a good job on, but actually aren't.
And would it help if we provide some preliminary benchmarks? Maybe you have some recommendations on how such a benchmarks could be done.
Towards Simeon's point, I think we really do need to get that data from a broad swath of users and make sure that it's really representative of that real-world experience. But any data that you can give us around your needs, and like I say, this is the number of different cases we have here, this is why this is important, is useful. We would certainly not turn away any other benchmarks you have. Felipe and Bongwu in their work on disabling static rules have been doing some just benchmarks to see what does it look like. And those, we know that those aren't going to be final or necessarily indicative of what every user is going to have, but they're still very useful as that starting point.
Peter.
It's a question for Mozilla this time.
Okay, loud.
Okay.
Because I have no remote question.
Okay. Oh, you do?
I don't.
Oh.
That's why it's okay.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, for Firefox, has there been any consideration of implementing an ad blocker inside Firefox, like with Brave? They've implemented it directly in the engine.
We haven't considered it on our team. We believe that it's something that extensions can do. We provide APIs, and extension developers will build the extension in a way that's best for the user, for that specific audience.
Okay.
We do have some we have some things called anti-tracking protection that does use some smaller lists to block specific things.
Okay, thank you.
The chat is silent. I'm able to scroll. I think I'm at the top. I'm not missing out.
All right.
Here we go.
If the issue is user experience, could there be different limits depending on like the performance of the browser, like of the machine the users have, like on mobile lower, on desktop, MacBooks higher?
We've thought about whether we would want something like that, and it is challenging for a couple of reasons. One is that we want Chrome and, by extension, extensions, to work fairly similarly across all devices. The web is supposed to go where you are, and we want to make sure that we don't give you a worse experience in Chrome just because you're using a $300 Chromebook instead of a $3,000 MacBook. Of course, there's only so much that we can do there. Anyone who's had like a video call knows that it doesn't always look great on a lower-end device. But for the browser itself, we don't want to restrict capabilities into those higher-end devices. That's not to say that we won't do it if we find that it really does make sense and that's something that is a path forward. There's a lot of things that we have been looking at. So different limits for different devices, different limits for different users, or allowing users to say, yes, it's okay to use all of these resources. Those are all things that we've looked at, and we're exploring what the right way and right balance to do that is to give the users the best experience possible, while also enabling extensions to do the work that they need to do.
Question answered?
So to add that from Mozilla's perspective, well, we do really want developers and extension developers in particular to build extensions that are, well, best for all users, including low resource devices. We also believe that forcibly killing extensions or constraining them on powerful platforms such as desktop with plenty of memory is not the best way to go. So for example, in the event page implementation, we do not put a hard limit of 5 minutes, contrary to Chrome service workers, where service workers are killed after 5 minutes. We do not do that because we believe extensions should decide for themselves to use the resource available to do what they do.
All right, we have a remote question that came in from Anonymous. So the question goes, do you think that MV3 will affect innovation in the ad blocking sphere? For example, by making it harder for people to work with machine learning models or complex on-the-fly heuristics to block content? Who wants to take that one?
And that's almost more a question for ad block developers as well.
Well, I can take that as an ad block developer. I think, yeah, I do think it's a bit concerning that the engine is now becoming this like kind of immutable model inside of the browser. I feel like that is, in a sense, locking up innovation and constraining the ability to do experimentation there. Of course, it will be more possible to, I mean, it will always be possible to submit upstream PRs to try to get things changed, but it sounds like Chrome understandably has a very long review process and is trying to appeal to an extremely broad audience, versus ad blockers generally tend to have a more niche audience and are able to specialize more narrowly. And I think that diversity is generally a good thing, but I can say for Brave, having the whole browser platform available to work in has been very nice in terms of being able to experiment and try new things, and whether that comes to new filter patterns or other kind of privacy protections like that.
All right.
I have a quick thought.
Sure.
I tend to think about things as a developer relations engineer from the developer point of view, or try to figure out solutions for if this technical limitation exists, what options are there? So I haven't talked to my compatriots about this, but I think there is at least the ability to experiment and explore using like the debugger API, where Chrome DevTools protocol exposes another method of interacting with and modifying network requests. This may give you an opportunity to try some stuff, figure out that a new rule that needs to be created, or that with a particular matching strategy that you're more effective, and then that feeds into the process of actually getting that in the browser.
All right. I see you, Ryan. You have been holding your question, but I have another remote one. Do you mind if I take this one in first, because we had so many on-sites? We have over 20 minutes left, so I'm all positive you will still be able to ask it. So another question from the remote audience, and I believe this one is also for you, Anton. It goes, in the future, how would Brave manage multiple versions on the same extension? So for example, MuBlock Origin version 2 installed on Brave, and then somehow a v3 version later on too. Do you have any plans to communicate to users around multiple versions of the same extension installed?
I think at the moment we don't have plans to like automatically upgrade users from version 2 to version 3 or anything like that. It's kind of hard to predict as well, because we haven't really seen any manifest v3 versions that are being pushed instead of the manifest v2 versions. But ultimately, I think we're going to try to do whatever's best for user choice. I don't think we want to force a different extension version on them unless the extension developer has explicitly stated that they no longer want to have any users using the older version because it's going to be unmaintained and become significantly out of date.
Thank you. Ryan?
Thank you. So with Mozilla still supporting web request and v3, is that not possible with Chrome where they could do web request and v3 at the same time? You don't necessarily need to remove the old API just because v3 exists now.
Short answer is yes, it is possible, because they're doing it.
Computers.
Anything
you want.
Yes, please. Please?
Sorry? Yeah. Oh. The shift to declarative net request from web request was not for a single reason. It was for a combination of reasons. And that combination of reasons includes moving to more of an ephemeral life with the service worker so that you can have the browser still do the ad blocking on the behalf of the extension without the extension needing to be active for that. It was also for performance reasons, where by being able to have that decision about the network request be done in the browser process, we managed to save a lot of that inter-process communication and those process hops and serialization of that request, so it's that much faster. It's also because of privacy, where if we have the extensions providing these rules, we don't have to give those extensions all of the data around those. And I understand from Andre's talk that there's still cosmetic filtering and we still have host permissions for those. But this is that step in the direction of being able to have less of your data go to these other parties. I also want to say, you're not the bad guys. We're not trying to keep the data from you. It's that we have a whole platform. Everyone here are the folks that we're not worried about. You know, these are all the good actors. You're coming out here to talk about extensions, putting on a whole summit for them. That's fantastic. We're worried about the other people who aren't as good of actors. And unfortunately, we can't treat those extensions differently in the same way, so we need to worry about the platform as a whole. So there is that technical feasibility. Like Simeon mentioned, it's computers, it's code, it's a technical problem. We can solve anything. And Firefox is doing that. But we felt that it was the right decision for the platform for that combination of reasons to move towards declarative net request away from web request.
Just another question. I mean, regarding the static rules, I mean, I struggle to understand, given how dynamic the lists are. Like, we will probably roll out updates in a day, 20 to 30 to 40 to 50, it could be a busy day, but you'll roll out rules pretty much on a daily basis, an hourly basis, and having, say, this is the set number of rules that you'll go, you'll be packaging into this extension. There could be bugs just purely because it was based on a rule set maybe 6 or 7 days ago, and since then there have been numerous updates, and it could become like a web compat nightmare because we're packaging essentially an old product in an extension, if you know what I'm saying. It's at the moment, so when you download an extension, it'll grab whatever's the latest, it'll just update straight away, bang. Update 0 day, no static rules, it just grabs what's on the web, implements that, and that's 0 day because it's all the updates as of right now. But if you go, well, it's only the static rules now, which is bound to that, when was that updated? It could have been updated, 3 or 4, maybe a week ago, and that there'll be bugs in that, there'll be potentially bugs that were fixed, but not fixed in that static package.
Yeah, and that, again, is the reason that we acknowledge that there is this need for dynamically updating the rules and why we provide that mechanism. So we know that it is going to be something where you're not going to be able to push out a new version of the extension and have it go through the review process and be live in the store and then get downloaded to users' machines in the amount of time that you would want to fix one of the high priority bugs, like the ones we heard about today for taking down Google Docs, heard about yesterday. So we know there is that need, and that's the motivation behind dynamic rules. As David had mentioned yesterday, we're also looking into how can we help to streamline some of these requests to make it so that there isn't that weak gap and maybe it's a day old. We understand that's still too long, dynamic rules. So.
Yeah, I mean, the update's pretty much zero. So pretty much someone can just press an update and it'll be, they don't have to wait for someone to approve that that method. It will be literally, I mean, it gets automatic updated regardless, but if someone wanted an update that was done half an hour ago, it's literally half an hour. They don't have to worry about somebody actually requesting an approval and go through an approval process. I mean, one day could be too long for some people though.
To Devlin's point, though, dynamic rules give you the capability of reacting immediately. You can even have push notifications to the extensions that then immediately trigger it as soon as a new update goes out. So there is additional work here and maybe some additional discussions around what the platform could better do to help here. But the technical capabilities exist today that the extension could receive, say, a push notification, go fetch a new JSON file, diff the difference between the two, disable the rules that are removed, add new rules that are added, and get the changes to the users in no time.
All right, I have another remote question here. It goes, one of the hypotheses of removing web requests and having DNR was that it would reduce malware or misuse of this powerful API. Once V3 does come out, do you plan to talk publicly about whether that hypothesis indeed was true? For example, how much positive effect, if any, did the removal of web requests have in the real world based on actual data?
I don't know how much we'll be able to go into the details about malware. That's something that is usually pretty sensitive. We definitely do want to go into more details about some of the performance benefits. One of the challenges here is that there's no way to really do real A/B testing with something like this. We can't automatically convert extensions to MV3. I wish we could. It would be great. But we don't have that ability. And so when we're looking at these numbers, we're going to be looking at numbers from 2 years ago compared to numbers next year. And it's not going to be an apples-to-apples comparison that we would be able to hold them up side by side. That said, I still do want us to be able to share out a lot of those numbers and say these are some of the benefits that we're seeing as a result of this.
Thank you, Devlin. There's a question all the way over there. Yeah, Carlos, you can throw it. There we go, Jens.
Thanks. So I would like to ask for the Google people, what is from your perspective the biggest unknown or the biggest risk for MV3? You just extended the deadline for when extensions need to be compliant or compatible a little bit. So there seemed to be something. Yeah, would be interesting to know what it is from your perspective.
I can take some of that. In general, every migration that you have from a technology to another are pretty difficult because the type of conversation we like to have, they happen as the deadline comes closer and closer. That's why you oftentimes see those move in planning and so on. But as we get closer, we get like people like Andre trying actually to migrate to Manifest v3, and then we learn some of the gaps and what we need to do to actually get closer to an ideal state. So in general, like that sort of conversation is what makes migration successful. So the biggest risk is not having those type of channel between developers and us.
And from a technical perspective, so is there some uncertainty around features, changes that you do with MV3 that could, for example, cause users to use other browsers? Just an example, like anything along that lines?
I think the biggest unknown is the unknowns. And I know that that's not a great answer, but that's kind of the honest one. We know that as Alex was mentioning, as people start to adopt this, we're going to have more things that come up, and those probably will need technical solutions. And our question is, do we have those technical solutions, and can we build those technical solutions? But without knowing what those things that we don't know are, I think it's challenging. I don't think that there's a particular technical aspect that we know of right now that we say, oh, we're really worried about this part.
And last follow-up question, maybe? So the people that listen on the live stream and that are sitting here, if some of these unknowns get discovered by extension developers, what is the best channel for you, for your convenience, to receive those issues or these requests for changes?
I think that going forward, we want to lean very heavily into the Webextensions community group. And so I would say that I should let Simeon answer exactly what the best forum for that is.
I was going to start by saying a well-written CR bug is invaluable because it gives us a thing that we can track. But by extension, a well-written WECG bug is fantastic. That gives us the opportunity to talk about it with other browser vendors and make sure that we're going down the right path. So yes, please report issues on the WECG. If you have the time to attend and talk about them, that would also be extremely welcome.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jens. We actually also got a question on the chat from Shwetank, who you all know from the past summits. But I believe the question goes into the same direction as yours, Jens, but I'll read it out anyways. So, Shwetank was addressing his question to all of the browser makers on stage, and his question was, what specific input would you appreciate from the ad filtering community when it comes to V3?
I was just going to start from the left and go from there.
Okay, yeah, I guess we'd love to hear about what kind of use cases you have for I guess the best way, well, for the most part, we're taking whatever is Chromium has, and we're trying to build on top of that. So we're definitely keeping Manifest v2. If there's anything else we can do, I think that would be great to hear. But for the most part, I think that's where our stance is.
Keeping MV2 is quite difficult as they remove features over time. So
We'll do our best.
We'll look forward to how you will manage that. I'll go next, I guess.
Sure.
I think much of the feedback that all browser vendors see is basically, we can do this. That is not really good feedback. More useful feedback would be, you want to do something, but it's more difficult or more complicated to do in MV3, and then we can try to address that by addressing specific APIs. Some kind of feedback is counter proposals, but that doesn't address the underlying foundations for the change to the new API in MV3. So basically describing the use cases, why it cannot be implemented yet in MV3, and what you've tried could be very useful in written form preferably, so that everyone can read it.
So a bit like a user story, because I want to do this and this, I'm missing out on this and this.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
I was going to say something along the same lines. I mentioned well-written issues earlier. I specifically had in mind things where people basically say, X doesn't work, doesn't tell us where they were using it or how they did it or what else they tried or what the circumstances were. So like context is extremely useful. And to that end, what the objective is, not just like, I want to use this API because this API says it does the thing I want. Okay, we understand that it's not doing what you want right now. So what are you trying to do? Why are you going down this path? What led you to this solution? What else have you tried? I think more specifically for this audience, the exploration of different capabilities or signals that you're trying to use when matching requests. So I'm particularly thinking about declarative net request right now. What is missing? What kind of transformations are you trying to perform, like on a request, and you want to move things into a different location in a query parameter or something? What are the set of operations that you want to do? Then we can think about how to do that, and hopefully arrive at a solution that is performant and that works well, gives you the capabilities you need, and is, I've been using the word so much lately, is a scalable solution.
Okay, that covers it, or do you have additional thoughts, comments?
I absolutely agree with what Rob said, and Alex has a great analogy about why you shouldn't ask for a chainsaw. But the only other thing that I would add to that is from this community in particular, data is invaluable. And so in the work on disabling static rules, we were talking about whether there would be limits there and what they would be, and being able to ask, hey, well, how many times have you needed to disable a rule in the last 28 days? And being able to get that feedback is so valuable to us in being able to make those informed decisions.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing. Also, that we talked a lot about the migration and like the substitution and some of the features. We're also curious to hear about, I mean, Manifest v3 is not the end. There's like more capabilities we want to add. Kind of curious to hear about those too. As Chrome evolves, Chrome allows more things. Is there specific APIs you want that are not just, you know, reinstating what was? I'm also very curious to hear about those.
Great, thank you. Hugh.
One more minor question to Google. I think you guys are introducing these badges in the Google extension store, correct? In terms of like trusted developers and stuff.
I think we introduced them like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that system, why not use this merit-based system to have access to the web request functionality for the good actors?
That's a very good question. It has been a topic of conversation internally. I hate using that word again. Scale is the issue again. A lot of those scenarios, they make a lot of sense when you think about a few developers, but then if you think about the breadth of the catalog of the web store and how many people use them, even in a way that, you know, I would say the common user doesn't know, like it's used in enterprise and it's used in so many ways that it becomes pretty difficult to do things like that. Especially once you start granting like sort of like a special access when something goes wrong, then it backfires very strongly. And I think that is definitely something that we have been thinking about, but it's very hard to implement.
All right, I have another remote question. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. So it comes from Ajay Ramachandrana, and the question is there going to be a process for suggesting new types of rules in the future?
I don't think we have a formal process for that specifically. If it is useful, maybe. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts, Devlin?
Again, here I would very much lean on the Webextensions community group. I think right now there is a process, it's just not very well defined. As we heard from Felipe's talk yesterday, the extensions platform being open is still fairly young. It's not as mature as the web platform where we've had 30 plus years to establish, here is how we propose new standards. We're still growing, and I think a lot of that growth is happening in the Webextensions community group. For now, I think that's still, that would be the right process for proposing these types of new rules or new functionality. But if we find that that is something that deserves a separate process, we could potentially instrument that. But I think that doing that in an open way across browsers is the right way to kind of lean into it.
Yeah.
And if in doubt, the Webextensions community group also has a chat, so you can ask questions if you are not sure about how to file the issue.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, that is a super good opportunity to talk to people, see if this idea has been explored, try to get initial ideation on what a good issue might look like, and then get guidance on how to kick off the conversation.
All right, looking at the time here, we have 70 seconds left. And we know you asked too long questions with too complicated answers. I mean, no, I don't want to prevent you asking a question. Go ahead.
This one would be simple. It's for Rob. Until a couple of years ago, Addons Mozilla org had an option to have several update channels for an extension. And then you, well, removed it. Do you plan to get it back? Because it's quite important now to have it, since we will have two different types of extensions. We will have like MV2 in stable, and we would like to test MV3 properly and to upgrade properly.
The feature was removed. We could consider getting it back. It's just one of the options, but we have no definite plans there yet. But if there's anything, we will announce it. You can try to follow us at blog.mozilla.org/addons. We will publish any announcements there.
And I squeeze a very, very quick question about Chrome Web Store, since I am with the mic. What about some kind of a fast lane for DNR? Could you please elaborate? Why is that still not done?
Sorry, can you repeat that? A
fast lane review for DNR. You know, DNR only changes, for instance.
I mean, I think that was mentioned actually yesterday on some of the features we're thinking about in the future that would be coming. So that's definitely something that would be part of our roadmap eventually.
Okay.
Happy? Great. Then everybody's happy. Hopefully the people at home too, who could provide us their questions as well. Thank you for this round. A big round of applause for the browser talk. Very happy to have had you all.